Hello, and welcome to this Business in Japan presentation. Over the next 15 minutes, we will briefly go over the high points of Japan, its people, their culture, and their general business environment and economics. We will compare it to the United States and other regional countries. We hope this presentation will provide a solid foundation for your Japanese business experience. Please feel free to follow along with your quick reference guide that was provided to you, as it captures and supplements all the highlights. Okay, let's get started. Japan is approximately 6,500 miles, or 10,500 kilometers, from the UT Tyler campus. It is a collection of 6,852 islands along the Pacific coast of East Asia. Japan lies to the east of China, North Korea, South Korea, and Russia. Japan is the 11th most populated country with over 127 million people. The country is broken down into 47 prefectures. About 73% of Japan is unsuitable for agricultural, industrial, or residential use, resulting in an extremely high population density, as illustrated by the dark areas of the map. The Greater Tokyo area is the largest metropolitan area in the world, with over 30 million residents. Japan is linguistically and culturally homogeneous, composed of 98.5% ethnic Japanese and small populations of foreign workers. Shinto is the largest religion in Japan, practiced by nearly 80% of the population, yet only a small percentage of these identify themselves as Shintoists in surveys. People who identify as non-religious in surveys actually mean that they do not belong to religious organizations, even though they take part in Shinto rituals and worship. Less than 40% of the population of Japan identifies with an organized religion. Around 34% are Buddhists, 4% are members of the Shinto sects, and 1% to 2% are Christians. Japan is experiencing a demographic crisis. They are thought to have the highest proportion of elderly citizens in the world and the third lowest birth rate in the world. It is projected that the population of Japan will fall by 25% by 2050. People over the age of 65 are estimated to be 38% of the population in 2055. In contrast, the USA will expect to see a growth in their workforce. In order to compare and contrast cultural and ethical differences, we will look at Hofstede's cultural insights. First, let's go over the power distance insight. At an intermediate score of 54, Japan is a borderline hierarchical society, but not as much as other Asian societies. In business, it may seem like a hierarchical society because of the length of time it can take to make a decision. However, this example shows that in Japanese society, there is no one person who can make the final decision like in more hierarchical societies. Japan has also always been a meritocracy. There is a strong belief in Japanese society that everybody is born equal, and anyone can get ahead if they work hard enough. Japan scores 46 on the individual scale versus a score of 91 for the United States. Japan is definitely more collectivist-oriented than the United States, but it's not as collectivist as most of its Asian neighbors. Most Japanese put the harmony of the group above the expression of individual opinions, and people have a strong sense of shame for losing face. Don't be surprised if the only loud voice on the bus or train you hear is your own. Japanese often put their concerns for others ahead of their own and consider loud talking and laughing in public places to be rude. Moving on to masculinity versus femininity, we see that Japan scores higher than the US. At a score of 95, Japan is one of the most masculine countries in the world. The combination of this masculinity with their mild collectivism results in extreme competition between groups. At a young age, children learn to compete against one another, and in corporate life, employees are most motivated when they are fighting as a team against their competitors. This drive for perfection is also seen in Japan's notorious reputation for creating workaholics. It also might be seen in Japan's large suicide rate. Uncertainty avoidance is the next cultural category we will investigate. Japan is one of the most uncertainty-avoiding countries on Earth, while the U.S. scores below average. Possibly due to the constant threat of natural disasters, such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcano eruptions, the Japanese prepare themselves for every situation. Life is highly ritualized, and there are lots of ceremonies. Be prepared for lots of feasibility studies and risk assessments in business dealings. High uncertainty avoidance means changes can be difficult to realize. Pragmatism, or how society maintains some links to its past while dealing with the changes of the present and future, is the next category. This category sees the largest gap between Japan and the United States. At 88, Japan scores as one of the most pragmatic societies, while the U.S. scores a paltry 26. The Japanese see their life as a short moment in a long history of mankind without the notion of the one and only Almighty God. In business, long-term orientation seen in high research and development investment rather than quarterly profit illustrates this philosophy. American businesses are much more likely to measure their performance on a short-term basis, and Americans often echo the phrase, "What have you done for me lately?" Finally, we'll look at indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence is defined as a tendency towards relative weak control over one's urges, while strong control is defined as restraint. Not surprisingly, Japan scores a low 42, indicating a culture of restraint. This means they put less emphasis on leisure time and control the gratification of their desires. Conversely, the United States scores a 68 and touts the attitude of work hard, play hard.
I will be discussing Japan's political economy, national trade policies, and its inward foreign direct investment. First, let's talk politics. Did you know that Japan has the oldest surviving monarchy? It was founded in 660 BC by Emperor Jimmu and survives today with Emperor Akito as the current head of the regime. After World War II, though, the role of the emperor has become more ceremonial than political. The government is currently a parliamentary government with a constitutional monarchy. Much like the United States, it has a judicial branch, an executive branch, and a legislative branch. The government is currently headed by the Prime Minister. Can you guess how many political parties Japan currently has? If you guess 3, sorry, you'd be wrong. Japan currently has 9, yes, 9 political parties. And you thought our two-party system here in the United States was slow to act. Moving on to corruption, Japan scores fairly well on the corruption and anti-bribery indexes. The only questionable practice is the traditional act of assigning retired government officials to top positions within Japanese companies. This is a tradition that is called amokidori. Other than that, there are penal codes, ethics, and unfair competition acts that limit gifts that are made to mid and senior level government officials. Concerning national trade, Japan both imports and exports goods and commodities. Can you guess who Japan's biggest export partner is? If you guess the United States, sorry, wrong again. Japan's biggest export partner is actually China, who makes up about 18.1%, compared to 17.8% of the United States. Japan's largest export is currently motor vehicles, which makes up about 13.6% of Japan's total exports, which totals about $697 billion. For imports, China tops the list again with 21.3%. Japan's top import is petroleum, with imports totaling $766 billion. It is important to note that in 2011, Japan suffered a terrible earthquake and tsunami. Because of this disaster, the Japanese economy contracted. The reconstruction is expected to take up about 4% of the gross domestic product, and it will continue until March of 2016. Related to that, Japanese authorities recognize the need for structural reform, which brings us to our next topic and my last topic of discussion, foreign direct investment, or FDI. In 2012, the government cut the statutory corporation tax to improve incentives to invest within Japan. Japan grants the Most Favored Nations status, or MFN, to most countries and economies, with a few exceptions, for countries such as North Korea and the Republic of South Sudan. In an effort to stimulate its economy, Japan is attempting to lower its barriers to attract investments from abroad. Thus, it is very receptive to inward FDI.
While Japan may still have a monarchy, it is one of the most political free countries in the world. Ranked only 8 countries below the United States with the Heritage Foundation, Japan is a front-runner of human rights. Japan's financial system is very similar to the United States. Japan uses commercial banking, which consists of deposits to then loan, like the U.S., as well as a Dow Jones Stock Exchange called the Nikkei. The Nikkei and the Tokyo Stock Exchange are some of the most established markets in the world. Ranked in 2012 as the third largest economy by GDP, Japan's economy is a symbol of the strength of its people. As many of you may already know, the currency of Japan is called the yen. To give you an idea of the worth, at this time you can exchange $1 US for about 118 yen, which will allow you to purchase a bottle of water. The McDonald's Big Mac, for example, will probably cost you 650 yen. Japan's national debt has dramatically increased as it tries to recover from the recent world events. With the global recession of 2009 and the tragic earthquake events in 2011, the national debt has risen to over 200% of the GDP and has topped over 1 quadrillion yen. In comparison, the United States' national debt is less than half of Japan's. One Stanford economist believes that either major spending cuts or tax increases are the only way to avoid a debt crisis. To help slow down the national debt, Japan has increased the sales tax, which ended up causing the GDP to shrink by 6.8% in the summer of 2014. Japan is still trying to determine if another increase in sales tax is needed in 2015. Japan in the past experienced deflation in consumer prices between the years 2010 through 2012. In 2013, Japan experienced a 0.36% of inflation, signaling growth in the economy. Japan has several strengths in their business environment, including one of the most educated workforces in the world, a strong desire for the newest technology, and a collectivist-oriented society. As with any strengths, Japan does have a few weaknesses, including an isolated location, an aging population, and a high debt burden. A few of the opportunities within Japan include the proximity to the growing nearby Asian markets and a large population density market within Japan itself. Because of the close proximity to the local growing Asian markets, Japan does have to compete against the low wages paid to those workers. Due to the debt load from the recent economic events, including the tsunami, there is a possibility of increased taxes in the near future. As we have experienced, Japan is a proud and respected nation. The people of Japan are loyal and care for those around them. It is one of the best places to grow your business in the world.